This weekend, this is the people's fight. This is the underground fight of the night. These guys are featherweights knocking on the door of the rankings. We have Benoit, Quebec, Canada's own heir, Charles Jourdain, taking on the prospect. Bud, you've had 23 fights. You got to drop that nickname. It's Nathaniel Wood, the former Cage Warriors champion, looking to get it done at featherweight, and he had 22 pro fights at bantamweight. The whole span of his career. And then the weight cut was too much. So his last fight, he takes on Charles Rosa. He's looking to make it two Charles in a row. 30-26, 30-26, 30-27 against Rosa. They hugged it out. Michael Bisping hated it in that matchup, but Nathaniel Wood looked like a man unchained in that fight. His kicks were great. His boxing combinations were great. He looked like the fighter that we came to love at 135 pounds. Obviously, he had that fight of the night against Casey Kenny before he took a long stretch away, because that was October 2020 before fighting at UFC London here not that long ago. And for Charles Jourdain, his last time out, he took on PFL money man Shane Burgos. If the fans didn't know that one, yeah, Shane Burgos took the bag. And for Jourdain, you go back and watch that fight, and I can talk about the MMA decisions. I mean, some had it for Burgos, some had it for Jourdain. I thought Jourdain did enough in the first round with his boxing. Obviously, Burgos was able to take the back and hold it for about 2.5 minutes of that first round. But the third round, if you just watch the third round, Charles Jourdain completely outboxed Shane Burgos and looked amazing in that one. The second round, Burgos controlled the back for about 4 minutes of it, enough for Michael Bell to give a 10-8 in that one.
If you have someone's back for 4 minutes, it's hard not to give
the first minute, Charles Jourdain completely outboxed him.
Well aware. 80% of the round was spent with another man on his back, though.
Damage means more. But regardless, for Charles Jourdain, I said this at one point in his UFC career, Matt, in one of our videos. I said, is he the best UFC featherweight that's 2-2-1? I'm going to frame it this way. Is he the best UFC featherweight that's 4-4-1 now in his career?
Without a doubt.
It's kind of strange to see Jourdain at this point in his career 4-4-1, but fighting the level of competition that he has. In this matchup, I think it's a lot of fun. What do you make of this matchup here?
This is the fight that tells us whether or not Nathaniel Wood can fight at featherweight. Because here's the thing. I thought he was going to beat Charles Rosa like everybody else in the world. So do you know what I learned from him beating Charles Rosa? Pretty much nothing, for being honest. Like, his volume looked a little bit better because I don't think the weight cut's getting to him as much as it did at 135. And people probably remember, like, the crazy pictures of him when he was getting ready to weigh in at 135. You could see every fiber in this man's body. You could see every vein in this guy's body.
He was supposed to fight at bantamweight earlier on this spring, and then in the 11th hour, the fight was canceled.
Exactly. So the thing about Wood was, he was a great 2-round fighter at the bantamweight division, but the weight cut would sort of steal that last 5 minutes from him. I don't think that's going to be a case at 145, but he isn't going to be the biggest guy in this division. Like, some guys move up in weight and they're still big for the next weight division. Think of a guy like Max Holloway. Like, Holloway, if he moved up to 155, would still be a pretty big lightweight. The thing about Wood is, he is going to suffer with some of the height against some of these upper echelon featherweights. Think about guys like Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez, Max Holloway. Like,
Brian Ortega is 2 inches taller than him.
That's what I mean. Like, these guys are all really, really big for the weight class. So I do think that at a certain point, Nathaniel Wood's going to struggle with some of the physicality of some of these guys, because he has good punching power, but he's not one of these top-tier punchers. So again, I do think it's going to struggle, or at least his power is going to struggle, up in this weight class against a guy like Charles Jourdain. But he is so technical, and that's always been the thing about Nathaniel Wood. He can work behind a jab. He likes to throw a straight right behind it. If you're not really good with your own boxing, if you don't move well on the feet, which he throws really good leg kicks to help cut down his opponent's movement, he is going to be one of those sniper kind of fighters. Even against Charles Rosa, he was able to cut down on the leg, make him a sitting duck, really box him up with some of his combinations. And then when the fight did hit the mat, Nathaniel Wood's not some scrub. I know we don't normally talk about his grappling, just because it's not really the part of his game that's on showcase all that often. But when he's in top control, he has really good ground and pound, really nice elbows too from the clinch and on the ground. I just don't know how this fight isn't going to be amazing. Like, this is one of those fights where I don't care who wins, I don't care who loses, I don't care when it gets stopped. Like, it's just going to be an awesome fight between two really good fighters in the weight class.
I think it's going to be really, really close. And I thought for Nathaniel Wood taking on Charles Rosa, a guy who has experience at 145 and 155, size-wise, they matched up really, really well in that one.
But Rosa's not the biggest guy in the weight class at all. Like, when Rosa fought Shane Burgos, he looked small compared to him. When he fought Yair, he looked small compared to him.
Well, and I mean, Shane Burgos looked a weight class bigger than Charles Jourdain in that matchup. Like, Burgos, maybe it was the camera angle, he looked huge, but in that matchup, it was a bit of a surprise that Burgos decided, I'm not going to box with Jourdain, I'm going to work in my takedowns and my wrestling and have a lot of success with it. And for Jourdain, we saw from the orthodox stance, his boxing was so fast, so crisp, with a lot of power. Obviously, you know him from southpaw. He's that leveled up Gabriel Benitez that we always wanted. His kicks to all 3 levels from southpaw are great. And when he switches over to orthodox, the boxing is there. I'm eager to see how Nathaniel Wood, because he is a big leg kicker, how that factors into his game. Because if it's orthodox versus southpaw, that opens up the body kick for Charles Jourdain, where it could be interesting to see how he decides to target the lead leg of Jourdain to then open up the orthodox boxing out of Jourdain. But when I do look at this matchup, very, very well-rounded, very, very close fight. Each guy skill for skill matches up very well. And I can see a scene where Nathaniel Wood pushes a pace, Jourdain backing up, he holds that really high guard, and then he opens up with some of his striking, or Jourdain's able to push a bit of a pace, throw his kicks, open up that longer range to where he can find success. So we do look at this matchup, we do look at the odds. Jourdain open a minus 200 favorite. He's a minus 140 right now. For Nathaniel Wood, open plus 170, plus 116. We have a look at the Tapology votes. I would be surprised if they're not very close. I'm going to say over under 60% Charles Jourdain.
I think they'll be over.
I think they're going to be over. They're way over. 1,020 total votes, 73% Jourdain, 47% by decision, 43% by knockout. For the 27% that have Nathaniel Wood, 77% by decision. How do you see this fight playing out?
It's going to be interesting. Again, I think Nathaniel Wood's going to be the steadier fighter in this matchup. I think he's going to use the jab a lot. I do think he's going to stick to his kicks. The thing about Charles Jourdain is his peaks are going to be higher, but his valleys are going to be a lot lower too. And that's the thing that I have a really hard time predicting in this fight. Think about a third round Jourdain against Shane Burgos. Now think third round Jourdain against Julian Erosa. Like, it really depends on how fast is he going to burn early on in the fight. If he can fight at his own pace, then he will be around in that third round. And I do think his power shots will eventually get to Nathaniel Wood because he is the bigger guy. He is going to be whipping out heavier kicks. But there's a little part of me that thinks that the jab and the leg kicks of Nathaniel Wood can work to his benefit. I'm gonna pick Charles Jourdain ever so slightly in this matchup because, again, I do think that as this fight goes on, if he is dedicated to the leg kick and the body kick, it's at least going to level off these guys' cardio to make them similar versions of each other. And if it is one of those give one to take one type of fights, I do think Jourdain has the heavier hands in this matchup. So I'm ever so slightly picking Charles Jourdain, but you could definitely make a compelling argument either way.
Yeah, I mean, this fight kind of thrown together on short notice. Both guys having competed so recently. With Wood, the Rosa fight was just back in July. For Jourdain, the fight against, oh boy, Shane Burgos, that was back in July. And for Jourdain, that is the truth. The third rounds can be completely different. The fight against Julian Erosa, the fight against Andre Ewell, Jourdain was really pouring it on, just like he did in the Burgos matchup. So the lasting image in your head is, well, geez, I thought Jourdain beat Shane Burgos. I go back and watch that third round. How did he not beat him? And for Nathaniel Wood, you might forget about it. I mean, the loss to Casey Kenny was a fight of the night.
Close
they both
one,
threw great volume. The loss to John Dodson was the one that kind of derailed a little bit of the hype, but wins over Teco Quinonez, who we talk about all the time on the channel. John Castaneda, that's a win that really ages well, especially when you pair it up with this one.
And that's the weird thing about Nathaniel Wood. If you do match him up with someone who's outside, and I know this is going to sound oddly specific, but outside of like the top 17, top 18, he's going to blow the doors off them. Like, he's that much more technical than the majority of unranked fighters in the weight class. But that's the thing, when you do get up, especially in the featherweight division, into that like borderline ranking 17, 16, 15, 14, like those guys seem to be a world ahead of some of the other fighters. So that's why this fight is so important for Nathaniel Wood, because Jourdain is sort of the gatekeeper to the rankings right now. So if you are able to beat him, you're as legit as anybody in the division. But if you're not able to beat Jourdain, it does feel like the rankings are even that much further away from Wood. So this is such a fun fight.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood in the matchup. I love the volume on the feet. Both guys have incredible volume. I just love the steadiness of Wood to continue, where it's a lot of peaks and valleys with Charles Jourdain, but I absolutely love the matchup. I can't wait for it. We're split on the pick. It should be an amazing one. I really want to hear from the folks out there in the comment section on this one. You guys come with some of the best insight and knowledge in the sport down there in the comment section, so fill it up. I can't wait for the fights coming up this weekend. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.